Welcome back to the MSU WMA podcast. In this week's episode, we have Monish Verma, founding partner and CEO of Vardhan Wealth Management. Listen in as he covers his journey in financial planning and wealth management. We hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the WMA podcast. My name is Lefty Theodoru, and today we are here with Monish Verma, CEO at Vardhan Wealth Management.
Hi, Lefty. Thanks for having me.
So the first thing I want to ask is, could you tell me about the early stages of your career, how they helped shape who you are today, and your current role at Vardhan Wealth Management?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I started my career about 30 years ago in 1995. I've always had an aspiration to be in wealth management. At the time, it was more stockbroker or financial advisor was the terminology. I had a heavy affinity for the stock market and investing and Wall Street. So I really didn't start in this profession. I kind of detoured and went into law before I decided that wasn't for me and left and came back into this profession. My first real job was at Dean Witter. I would say, I started before that in this career, but my first real job was at Dean Witter, and it was really eye-opening to see how advisors really interacted and worked with their clients at the time and what they started with. At the time, they started with like a product 30 years ago, and they were cold calling. We used to cold call 10,000 people a month, just kind of pitching a product. And then that started changing the way I thought about the market and the industry. I moved on to a place called Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley was essentially bought Dean Witter, and we started more planning based and running off of a plan and looking at clients holistically, which was pretty early on for that part for us to do that at that time frame, because that was like about 27 years ago. So planning wasn't really popular at the time, but holistic viewpoints of a client, I thought, would give me a better opportunity to like really see what they're doing and help them in a larger scale rather than just selling them something. And then that I morphed into UBS. I left Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, and then went over to UBS. And that was a great experience. It was more banking interface. There's a lot of banking opportunities there. But then I realized I really wanted to create my own brand. I wanted to create my own opportunity set. I wanted to hire the people I wanted to hire with. And so that's why the seed of going independent was there all along. But I kind of really started honing it in around 1999 to 2000. 2020, so 5-6 years ago. And I interviewed and discussed with, my thoughts with quite a few people, and then kind of went live May of 2021, starting Vardhan Wealth Management. It's been a great opportunity to kind of see that progression and take things from starting out from right out of like basically, a young early 20s to where I am today. And seeing that progression happens, and those are kind of some of the stops along the way.
That's awesome to hear. So can you talk about any challenges that arose from that opportunity of, starting your own firm and becoming a partner?
Yeah. Well, I think the mindset of starting a firm is you have to be having a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. So to me, I always resonated with the fact of, and I had my own group and team within the bigger UBSs in the past where I was, but you still had some limitations because you were within a larger ecosystem. I really wanted to be more transparent with the clients. I wanted to be able to bring that fiduciary responsibility that I've always used, but I wanted to be more resonant within our conversations and more resonant within our relationships. We had clients starting to ask about, being a fiduciary versus not a fiduciary. That's a big thing that RIAs have, is that they are fiduciaries for their clients. And making proper decisions for them are important. We were always doing that from day one, but now we had that kind of staple behind us. And it allowed us to be more focused on the type of clients and the type of business we wanted to run. We're holistic wealth management. We're heavy planning based. Stocks and bonds and mutual funds or the public market was something that we always worked within, but we also wanted to work with more private market investments within our relationships. So those are the components of why I wanted to go independent. And then, there's two different types of growth. There's new client growth, going out and trying to get a new client or growing your current client base, and acquisition growth by expanding your client base, by acquiring practices. So I had a heavy interest in both, and I found trying to do that in the bigger firms was more problematic for me, but I found it to be something more kind of resonating with going independent and trying to do it. So that's why those are the reasons I went independent.
That's a great response. So I wanted to ask as well, can you talk about your firm's culture and the kind of values that you guys practice? Because when we have, speakers come to our club,
Yeah.
they really talk about, oh yeah, culture this, culture that, like you're gonna love it
Yeah.
here. But I really want you to kind of describe why is your firm so special, what makes it so unique?
Yeah. So those are great questions, and that's a specific question that I think it has to be resonated with any person or any place when you go to work with them. So I treat this like a family. Like everyone here who works within the ecosystem has a lot of value. They provide a lot of value to our clients. They provide it to their colleagues. And then they provide it to me. So we have to be very cohesive. So a simple thing, for example, is we run a 10 a.m. meeting every day where we check in with everyone, see how everyone's doing personally, right, family wise, and then we've got to kind of dive in and see what's everyone working on. Usually about twice a year, I check in with everyone and just say, hey, of the tasks and the things that you're required to do, we want to make sure that the lion's share of them are things that you're happy doing, right? We don't want you to have that proverbial you come in and you hate your job and you have to do a bunch of stuff you don't like to do. We try to align all the responsibilities that we have to do in our firm with the right people so they feel like they're adding value and they're having an enjoyment level at work. Because you're at work more than you're at home sometimes, right? So you want to enjoy your environment, you want to enjoy the people you're working with, you want to enjoy what you're doing, and you want to enjoy the clients that you're working with. So I'm a big proponent of making sure that everyone has a voice and their voice is heard, and they feel that this is a work environment that they can feel that there's growth and they feel that they have an opportunity to add a lot of value to the whole ecosystem going forward. So I think that's a very important part of the culture. So to me, when people say, what is your culture? I simply say one word, family. So you have to treat it like a family.
Yeah, that is very good point you make on being authentic and kind of just being who you are. And especially in terms of the clients when they come and they are looking to work with you, if they see that authenticity and they see that genuineness and you guys just being yourself, that'll make them, want to work with you more. They won't feel like you're hiding something or you're just trying to sell them something or anything like that. So,
Yes.
the next thing I wanted to ask was I saw that you participated in a Dale Carnegie training program. Can you talk
Yes.
about how that helped your experiences?
Yes, I was in the first teen class in Michigan, going into my senior year of high school, which was in 88 to 89. I found a lot of value in that class. It was a bunch of teens. I took it in Novi, Michigan. I found it to help me multiple levels. One is to kind of articulate and communicate, having thoughtful discussions and conversations with people, how to really engage with people at a very interpersonal level. This was back before the internet was out there and social media and phones, cell phones and stuff. So, communication was very important. And I felt like it really helped me kind of evolve pretty quick on how to be a proper and mindful communicator, I should say. So I liked it. I went back and graduate assisted it a couple of times. I was invited back to do that. I found a lot of value in that. A nice sidebar is, and one of my classes, a leadership course when I was at Michigan State, I was tasked to help put together the curriculum, and I used the Dale Carnegie principles in the curriculum for that semester. And I think a lot of students resonated with pieces of it, and have encouraged people to go and use it. In my family, I have three sons. One is a Michigan State freshman. My son took the Dale Carnegie course before his senior in high school, and I encouraged my other sons will be doing the same thing. I found a lot of value in it by allowing you to express yourself and be a good communicator. So I'm a big supporter of it.
Yeah. And is that something you think you'd recommend for even students here at MSU to try it out if they're interested?
I think I would tell people I think there's more value in taking it as a younger person than waiting until you're in your career and taking it later. Not to say that it's not always going to be some opportunity when when you have it, but I'll give you an example. As I was when I went back years later and I was a graduate assistant, I had a couple, and they're both senior members of a law firm, take it. Um, the spouse, she found a lot of value in it, and her husband not so much. He hated it. He was happy when the last day started, and they were both communicators by training, being lawyers. I mean, I'm friends with him to this day, and he still thinks that that's one of the worst things he ever had to endure, where his wife was loved the fact that she went through it. But I think that if I reflect back, I asked him, and he has four sons. I said, "Would you have your sons do it?" And he said the same thing. He goes, "I think, I think for some people, going through that at a younger age is going to be more impactful than waiting for you kind of have you kind of like your mindset. For example, for me, being in my age now, I'm in my mid 50s. It's hard for me to change my ways. Whereas when you're 16 to maybe 22 or 23, you're still molding who you are a little bit. A lot of things have been fixed, but you're still molding yourself. And how you communicate could be one of those things, how you mold. And I think it can really show you some value as you're trying to navigate the world that you decide to go into after college of, do I want to go into a speaking role? At the end of the day, to me, communications resonates through anything you do, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or you're a scientist. So communicating is at the basis of what we do, and I think like if you have those tools, I think it'll be value add. So I do think at the college level, having those kind of tools would be great. And I think if people have summers where they have the ability to invest in some time in taking a course like this, it would be invaluable. I know when my son took it, he did have some Michigan State students that were already at school in the class with him in the summer. So I know that some college students have that on their radar.
Yeah, and that's something else, a good point you make that is very important for students my age to know as they're going into this industry is that it's not all about, having those technical skills. It's about having those soft skills and really being a people person and being able to communicate effectively, and that'll
Yeah.
bring you more success than you think in your career.
I'll tell you, I've trained and met. I mean, I've hired and trained over 100 people in this industry in my past 30 years. And the one thing I'll tell you is that, the academic level of education is important, but it is not more important. I would find it equally important as the soft skills that people can kind of come up with as well. If you are smart and you can articulate your message to people, people are never going to know what you're trying to say. Whereas maybe someone else who has a art of articulating and speaking, they're going to always kind of have a better stance on things because I think they know how to communicate with people. So I firmly believe, people say there's street smarts and then there's book smarts. I say a right balance of those things with having these soft skills is a very important for any person going into the world in any profession, being able to have the right balance of all of that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I know a lot of others would agree with you as well.
Yeah.
So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about clients. How do you handle situations where a client's emotions influence their financial decisions? How do you kind of talk them through that?
So our industry is now morphed into a kind of like we're kind of confidants of clients. They come to us with family matters, business matters, personal matters. Sometimes our conversations go in a different way than we think when we're going to have a client conversation. It goes to their children, the legacy planning, multi-generational. So there's a lot of components. So really having a conversation, you're getting to be really a confidant of the client. Now, they entrust you with their wealth, their estate planning, their insurance planning, education funding for their children or grandchildren, making sure that their wishes are met after they pass along and helping the family deal with the financial what's left behind. So you build a pretty intimate relationships with most of your clients because there's a level of trust there. Like you're their advisor. I don't say financial advisor, I said advisor. So we are helping them with a lot of these questions. And sometimes when they have difficult things happening in their families, we have been called in to kind of be a mentor, a negotiator, a counselor, and really sit down and kind of segment out within the different family members what their opinion is, and then bring them together and have like having a family session. We've been involved in those many times. It is heartfelt because it's very touching at their emotional levels, right? Sometimes when people have a lot of wealth and they have this family issue, the wealth is secondary to making sure that they still get through the fact that they still want to be family members, right? So we come into this situation a lot of times and we have to deal with their emotions. And I think those that end up having direct or indirect impact on financial decisions that are made, right? And I think that's why we have to have some level of that. I think there's been some work done at some of the bigger firms out there today of bringing in these type of people as specific counselors who are educated in this side into large family meetings, multi-family meetings where they're bringing different generations in. But I think at every level, even at the financial advisor level, um, there's a very heavy involvement of us in our clients' lives. And that then also comes with the sometimes inability for them to articulate what they want, and then they look to us to help them do that within the family. So there's a lot of emotional influence that we can help with the family dynamic, and that should be part of our job, and it is part of our job. And you know, you're just helping people out. And I think that's the one thing that I think that people sometimes really should understand in this profession. Empathy, sympathy are important to have when you're dealing with people. So, if you have, those are those soft skills we talked about, that you have to have these soft skills to be able to work with people, and they will understand when you're genuine with it or when you're looking at adding a zero to their portfolio, right? So I think the people that are more genuine are going to succeed faster in this kind of industry than the people who are just trying to be extremely ambitious with a self motivation involved.
Yeah, for sure. That is something that inspires me and kind of motivates me as I learn more about this industry, is that in the future, I won't only be making a good impact on somebody's lives or a family's lives financially, but also, emotionally, mentally, and
Yeah.
things like that. And they'll see
Right.
me as more than just an advisor. And that is success in my eyes.
Right.
So that kind of transitions to the next question I wanted to ask you. How does Monish Verma define success? What's your goal of success?
It's interesting as you get older, you kind of like look at that question and ask yourself if it's you have the same answer you would have. When I was in maybe your age, success was getting a really good opportunity or a job, doing well at school to get a job, that I would be proud to have. I would change that to job from to career, right? So and then when you get into that 20s, your definition of success is, am I going to, do well at my profession, be happy doing it, and then starting a family, right? That's success all of a sudden. In your 30s, it might be different. Starting a family, it might be different. But if you look back along your ages and you look back along the journey you evolved, I think a common thing that people strive for is to have self-happiness, right? You want to be happy. If you're happy, you're going to be able to help and you can be able to share your happiness with others. You're going to help them become happy, right? But you can't help those things unless you are happy yourself, right? So all of these goals and ambitions that people as we're getting older, all kind of self-define who we are, right? So I would tell you today at my mid 50s age, family for me is very important. I'm very aligned with what's going on with my kids and my wife and my family. I think it's very important. That takes precedent to me, right? You have to make sure that you add a lot of time for your family. Financial security is not only for yourself at this point in your life, but for your family. You want to make sure that you have financial security for yourself. Like when I look at it, I don't say, can I do this or do that? I want to make sure that I have financial success, that I can make sure that my kids have maybe an edge on life financially that I couldn't have or didn't have, right? So those are kind of the definitions I succeed. Also being a very empathetic communicator and leader to the people that work with me in my office, but who have entrusted us to help them and their families with their wealth and their health and their emotional success and their financial success. So that is a complicated ask of what is a definition, but those are the things that say drive me every day. What do you get out of bed for? Like, what do you want to do? I don't look at my career as a job. I don't have a 9 to 5 job. This is part of who I am and part of what I do all the time. We travel, my phone is on, right? I don't care if I'm sitting in Okemos, East Lansing, or Farmington Hills, or in Europe. My phone is always on because I want to be accessible, not because I think I need to be, because I want to be, right? But I think that defining success to me today in a general sense is to continue to grow my practice to a number that I feel is something that I think is going to be what I want it to be before I looked at the next chapter, which could be semi-retirement. But to also have a platform that if any of my sons found value in what they wanted to do as a career and come into this profession, that there's a platform for them to start with, right? If they wanted to go into sports investing and have athletes, this is a platform they can go into. If they wanted to go into philanthropy and open foundations and only work for those, this is a platform they can work with. So I wanted to have a platform for my next generation to be able to say, I have an interest in this year. If they want to go into being a doctor or a pilot, so be it, right? But if there's a platform that I could build that allows them to have a spring to something else, I wanted to do it. So that's my definition of success, is to being able, for personally, is to have something that I can potentially leave to the next generation. But more importantly is to make sure that I'm helping people the way they want to be helped for my clients and the people that work for me. Those are like all the components of success for me today. When you asked me when I was 23, my success was smiling and dialing and getting a yes rather than a no. That would have been a short-term definition of success. So it's a much more prolonged version of success, but as people get older, they're going to get their definition to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's very easy to get caught up in the moment, especially when you're younger and you have a lot of things going on. But it's very important to reevaluate your goals as you start new chapters in your life and kind of figure out, who am I and what do I really want to get out of this career path?
Right. I agree.
So the last question I'll ask you here today is just, what's one piece of advice you'd give to students like me coming into the industry to separate themselves, to make a name for themselves, and to have a good career?
Yeah. Be authentic. Be authentic to yourself. Be authentic to the people that you want to work with, work for. And when I say work for, I don't mean only clients. Working for meaning if that extends into your family. You want to make sure that you give enough of yourself to your family first, and then you obviously have a lot that you can give to your profession that you've chosen. But if you're authentic with that, and that's hard to know sometimes early on what that word means, but if you really kind of sit down and say, my vision is to become a wealth advisor or some component in this industry, what does that really mean to me? Right? Am I going into this because I want to help people? Am I going to this because I heard it was a good paying career? Right? Be authentic with what it is. And, I think that will guide you to make choices that are right, not only for you, but right, that will help you prosper and progress in this career. So that's the number one thing. I think we touched upon the soft skills. I think having soft skills, when I interview people, and they come work for me, I go through like, hey, make sure that, you're presenting yourself for your best version of you, right? Make sure that you look polished, make sure you look the part that you should be looking, right? I'm like, what I mean is don't just get out of bed in the morning and take an interview, right? It's something that's out there. I think that the goal should be that if you looked in the mirror and that's someone you would want to work with, then you've achieved your goal, right? If you looked in the mirror and you're like, I wouldn't work with that person because um, they're not sounding authentic. They're not looking at me. They're looking down all the time. They look fidgety because they feel like untrustworthy. If you ask yourself those questions, would I want to work with this person? Are they authentic? Are they true to their word? Will they hold to their word? Are they looking out for my best interest more than their best interest? If you can ask yourself those questions from the person looking in the mirror, you're on the right track. So that's what I would say is make sure that you're authentic to yourself. And I think that will take you a long way.
Yeah. And to anybody listening, if there's one thing I could take away from this episode, it would be that authenticity. Make sure you have that, and it'll take you very far.
Great.
That will conclude this week's episode. Thank you so much for being part of the WMA podcast, and we really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Lefty. Appreciate it, and good success to you and your the wealth management program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed this discussion, please like and share the podcast on Apple and Spotify. The WMA podcast is part of Michigan State University's Wealth Management Association, a student organization whose goal is to inspire the next generation of financial advisors. Feel free to follow us on social media at MSU WMA and check out our website at msuwma.com. Anything heard on either the MSU WMA or Spartan Journal podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice.